I never thought I'd be the guy with the Karen story that would make the entire neighborhood talk for months, but here we are. My name is Michael Bennett, and I've lived in the Whispering Pines subdivision for nearly 8 years. It's a pleasant community with well-maintained homes, friendly neighbors, well, mostly friendly, and an HOA that generally stays out of everyone's business as long as you keep your lawn mowed and your trash cans out of sight. That all changed when Patricia Wilcox was elected as the new HOA president. Patricia, or Trish, as she insisted everyone call her, though I never did, moved into our neighborhood about 2 years ago. She was in her mid-50s with an immaculately highlighted blonde bob that never moved, even in the strongest wind. She always wore pressed khakis and polo shirts with little embroidered flowers, as if she might be called to an impromptu golf game at any moment. From day one, she made it clear that she had big plans for our community. Apparently, those plans included making my life a living nightmare. It all started with my front yard landscaping. I'm something of a hobby gardener and had spent years cultivating a beautiful, drought-resistant garden that required minimal watering but stayed green and vibrant year-round. I'd even installed a sophisticated sprinkler system that was programmed to deliver precise amounts of water to different zones based on the plant's needs. My neighbors often complimented me on it, and a few had even asked for advice on their own gardens. I was proud of what I'd created. It was beautiful, environmentally responsible, and saved me money on my water bill. Then Patricia decided that my yard didn't conform to the aesthetic standards of Whispering Pines. She started leaving printed notices in my mailbox citing obscure bylaws about approved plantings and lawn coverage requirements. According to her interpretation, my yard needed to be at least 60% grass, which made no sense in our climate where water conservation was encouraged. I politely explained this to her multiple times, even showing her the Water Conservation Award I'd received from the city the previous year. "Well, Michael," she said, her voice dripping with condescension as she stood on my doorstep one Saturday morning, "awards don't override HOA bylaws. I'm sure your little garden is very nice, but rules are rules. You have 30 days to comply, or the HOA will take action." I closed the door a bit more firmly than necessary that day and immediately went to review our HOA covenant. As I suspected, there was nothing specific about grass coverage percentages, only vague language about maintaining attractive and well-kept landscapes. I also checked the local water conservation guidelines, which actually encouraged exactly the type of landscaping I had implemented. Armed with this information, I wrote a polite but firm email to the entire HOA board, explaining the situation and requesting that Patricia cease her harassment. That was my first mistake. I should have known that challenging Patricia publicly would only make things worse. The next day, I found her measuring my yard with a tape measure, clipboard in hand. When I asked what she was doing, she smiled that tight, lipstick smile of hers and said, "Just documenting the violations, Michael. Don't worry, you'll get a copy of everything for your records." I tried to reason with her. "Patricia, there's no violation here. The HOA board hasn't even responded to my email yet. You can't just make up rules and expect people to follow them." She tilted her head and looked at me as if I were a particularly slow child. "Actually, as HOA president, it's my job to interpret the bylaws, and I'm interpreting them to mean that your yard is non-compliant. Have a nice day." She turned and walked away, her sensible shoes clicking on the sidewalk. Over the next week, I received 3 more formal notices, each detailing increasingly specific violations of the HOA covenant. The final notice threatened a daily fine of $100 until I complied. I was livid but determined to handle this through proper channels. I contacted the other board members individually, and to my relief, most of them agreed that Patricia was overstepping. They promised to address it at the next board meeting in 2 weeks. I thought that would be the end of it, or at least a temporary reprieve. I was wrong. So very, very wrong. It was a Tuesday morning, and I had left for work earlier than usual for an important meeting. My neighbor across the street, Dan, called me around 10 a.m. "Mike," he said, his voice tense, "you need to come home right now. Patricia has a landscaping crew in your front yard, and they're tearing everything up." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "What do you mean, tearing everything up?" I mean, they've got shovels and they're digging up your plants. Patricia is standing there directing them. I tried to tell them to stop, but she showed me some HOA paperwork that she claims gives her the authority. Man, you need to get here now. I immediately left work and raced home, a 20-minute drive that I somehow managed in 12 minutes. When I pulled onto my street, I could see the disaster from a block away. A crew of 3 men was systematically destroying my garden. They had already removed most of my drought-resistant plants and shrubs, piling them unceremoniously by the curb. Patricia stood on the sidewalk, arms crossed, looking satisfied. I slammed my car door as I got out, striding toward her with what I'm sure was murder in my eyes. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I demanded, my voice carrying down the street. Several neighbors had come out to watch the commotion. Patricia didn't even flinch. "Enforcing the HOA covenant, Michael. You were given ample time to comply, and you chose not to. According to Section 18, Paragraph 12, the HOA has the right to remedy violations at the homeowner's expense if they aren't addressed within the specified time frame." "This is insane," I said, looking at the destruction of years of work. "You can't just come onto my property and destroy things. This is criminal trespassing and destruction of property. I'm calling the police." I pulled out my phone. "Go ahead," she said smugly, pulling a document from her designer tote bag. "This gives us the legal right to enter your property to address violations. It's in the covenant you signed when you bought your house." I was about to argue further when I heard one of the workers shout. Then I heard the distinctive sound of water, a lot of water, rushing with force. An alarmed cry went up from the workers, followed by a string of panicked Spanish that I couldn't fully translate, though I caught agua and tuberia, water and pipe. I ran to where they were working and saw immediately what had happened. In their zealous digging, they had struck my main sprinkler line, but not just any line. This was the connection point where my system tied into the city water main, a connection that had been professionally installed and permitted years ago. Water was now gushing out with incredible pressure, quickly flooding my yard and beginning to stream down the street. "Turn it off," Patricia screeched, her perfectly coiffed hair beginning to wilt in the growing humidity. "I can't just turn it off," I said, trying to keep my voice calm despite the rage and satisfaction warring inside me. "That's a direct line to the city water main. It needs to be shut off at the street level, and only city workers can do that." The workers were scrambling now, clearly realizing they'd made a major mistake. One was frantically calling someone on his phone, while another was futilely trying to stem the flow with his hands, getting soaked in the process. I calmly took out my phone and called 911. "Yes, I'd like to report a water main break at 435 Pinecrest Drive," I said, watching Patricia's face turn from smug to worried. An unauthorized landscaping crew, working under the direction of Patricia Wilcox from the Whispering Pines, HOA, has damaged the connection to the city water main. Water is flooding the street and we need emergency services immediately. Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "You didn't tell me there was a city connection there. This is your fault." I raised an eyebrow, feeling surprisingly calm now. "Actually, Patricia, it's clearly marked on the property survey that's on file with both the city and the HOA. You know, the documents you should have reviewed before authorizing this work. Not to mention, you had no legal right to be doing any of this in the first place." More neighbors were gathering now, watching as the impromptu river formed in our previously quiet street. The water was beginning to reach the edge of Patricia's immaculately landscaped yard across the way, and her expression grew more panicked. Within minutes we heard sirens. The fire department arrived first, followed closely by a city utilities truck. The firefighters quickly assessed the situation while the utilities workers rushed to locate the street-level shutoff valve. All the while, water continued to pour out, now creating a decent-sized pond in the street. The fire captain, a stern-looking woman named Captain Rodriguez, approached us. "Who's responsible for this?" she asked, looking between me, Patricia, and the workers. Before I could speak, Patricia jumped in. "This is Michael Bennett's property. The pipe is his responsibility." Captain Rodriguez looked at me questioningly. I explained the situation calmly, showing her the notices Patricia had left, and explaining how I'd come home to find her destroying my yard without proper authorization. "So you authorized this work?" Captain Rodriguez asked Patricia, her expression hardening. "I was acting in my capacity as HOA president," Patricia said, her voice losing some of its confidence. "The yard was in violation of our covenant." "Did you call 811 before digging?" the captain asked, referring to the utility marking service required by law before any excavation work. Patricia's silence was answer enough. "Ma'am, it's a legal requirement to have utilities marked before any digging occurs," Captain Rodriguez said. "And based on what Mr. Bennett is telling me, you may not have had the authority to be doing this work in the first place." By this time, the utilities workers had managed to shut off the water, though not before several hundred gallons had flooded the street and begun seeping into yards, including Patricia's pristine lawn. One of the city workers came over to join our conversation. "This is going to be a problem," he said, looking at the excavated area. "That's a city water main connection that's been damaged. The repairs will be extensive, and there will be fines for unauthorized excavation near a city utility. Who is in charge of this work?" All eyes turned to Patricia, whose face had gone from flushed to ashen. The landscaping crew, sensing which way the wind was blowing, quickly pointed to her as well. "La señora nos dijo que caváramos aquí," one of them said. "The lady told us to dig here." I couldn't help but feel a small surge of satisfaction as I watched Patricia's carefully constructed authority crumbling around her. The police arrived shortly after, and I gave them the same account I'd given Captain Rodriguez. They took statements from everyone present, including several neighbors who confirmed they'd seen Patricia directing the workers to dig up my yard. As the utilities team began the process of emergency repairs, one of the police officers pulled me aside. "Sir, do you want to press charges for criminal trespassing and destruction of property?" I considered it for a moment, looking at Patricia, who was now sitting on the curb, her khakis soaked from the knees down, mascara beginning to run as she dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. As satisfying as it might have been, I decided on a different approach. "Not at this time, officer," I said. "I think the city fines and the cost of repairs will be less than enough. But I would like it officially documented that this occurred without my consent and in potential violation of HOA procedures." The officer nodded, making a note in his report. "The city will likely pursue their own charges for the utility damage," he added. "That's not something you have control over." By late afternoon, temporary repairs had been made to stop the water leak, though the city workers informed us that more extensive work would be needed in the coming days. My yard looked like a war zone, plants uprooted, dirt everywhere, and a trench where the water line had been exposed. I approached Patricia, who was still sitting on the curb, looking shell-shocked. "The HOA insurance better cover all of this," I said quietly. "And I expect full restoration of my landscaping with professional gardeners of my choosing." She looked up at me, her earlier arrogance completely deflated. "The HOA has insurance, but there's a $10,000 deductible," she said weakly. I smiled for the first time that day. "Then, I guess you'll be bringing that up at the next board meeting, won't you? I'm sure the other board members will be very interested to hear how this happened." The next few weeks were a flurry of activity. The city completed the repairs to the water line, sending a bill for $12,000 directly to the HOA. They also issued fines totaling nearly $8,000 for unauthorized excavation near a utility line without proper permits or 811 clearance. An emergency HOA board meeting was called where Patricia tried to defend her actions. It didn't go well for her. The other board members, already skeptical of her heavy-handed approach, were furious about the potential financial liability she had created. Several homeowners who attended the meeting openly called for her resignation. "This is exactly the kind of overreach we were concerned about when you started issuing all these violation notices," said Eleanor Thompson, a retired attorney who had lived in the neighborhood since it was built. "The HOA exists to maintain property values and community standards, not to act as some sort of landscape police state." By the end of the meeting, Patricia had been removed as HOA president by unanimous vote of the remaining board members. She left the meeting in tears, and I almost felt sorry for her. The new interim president, Jim Cohen, approached me afterward. "We'll make this right, Michael," he assured me. "The HOA will cover all the damages and restoration of your yard, and we're reviewing the covenant to add explicit language preventing this kind of unilateral action in the future." True to their word, the HOA hired a professional landscaping company to restore my yard. I worked closely with them to recreate my drought-resistant garden, even improving upon my original design. The city utilities department, impressed by my commitment to water conservation, offered to feature my yard in their upcoming public awareness campaign about environmentally friendly landscaping. But the story doesn't end there. About a month after the incident, I was shopping at our local grocery store when I overheard a familiar voice in the next aisle. It was Patricia, speaking to someone about property management. Curious, I peeked around the end cap and saw her talking to a man in a business suit. "I have extensive experience in homeowners association management," she was saying, her voice carrying that same authoritative tone I knew so well. "I recently served as the president of the Whispering Pines HOA. The man nodded, looking impressed. "And why did you leave that position?" Patricia hesitated for just a moment. "I felt I had accomplished what I could there, and was looking for new challenges." I couldn't help myself. I stepped into the aisle, pushing my cart casually. "Oh, hello, Patricia," I said cheerfully. "Fancy meeting you here." Her eyes widened slightly, and I could see her calculating whether I had overheard her conversation. "This is Michael Bennett," she said stiffly to the man beside her. "One of the homeowners from Whispering Pines." I extended my hand to the gentleman. "Nice to meet you. Are you looking to hire Patricia for something?" He shook my hand firmly. "Robert Daniels, Lakeside Village Property Management. We're considering Miss Wilcox for a position overseeing several of our communities." "Interesting," I said, maintaining my friendly smile. "You might want to ask her about the $12,000 water main repair and $8,000 in city fines that Whispering Pines had to pay after she authorized illegal landscaping work without permits. Oh, and the reason she's no longer president is that the board voted unanimously to remove her." Robert's eyebrows shot up, and Patricia's face turned a shade of red I hadn't thought humanly possible. That's not exactly how it happened," she sputtered. "The police and city reports would disagree," I said mildly. "As would the minutes from the emergency board meeting. Public record, all of it." I turned back to Robert. "Just thought you might want to do a bit more due diligence before making your decision. Have a great day, both of you." I walked away, feeling Patricia's glare burning into my back. Perhaps it was petty of me, but after what she'd put me through, I couldn't resist the opportunity for a little karmic justice. Word of the incident spread throughout the neighboring communities. Patricia eventually sold her house and moved away, unable to face the whispers and barely concealed smirks from neighbors who had previously feared her reign of HOA terror. The last I heard, she had moved to a condominium with no yard to speak of. As for Whispering Pines, the HOA underwent a significant transformation following what became known as the Great Flood. The covenant was revised to include clear language about when and how the HOA could take action on perceived violations, requiring documented approval from at least 3 board members before any enforcement action could be taken. They also added specific provisions supporting environmentally friendly landscaping, using my yard as an exemplar in the new guideline. My restored garden flourished and became something of a local attraction. The city's water conservation department now brings tour groups to see it as an example of beautiful, sustainable landscaping. I've even started hosting monthly gardening workshops for neighbors interested in reducing their water usage. Sometimes I think about Patricia and hope she learns something from the experience. But mostly I enjoy the peace of my garden, the friendly waves of neighbors passing by, and the knowledge that one person standing up to unreasonable authority can create positive change for an entire community. And whenever I hear my sprinkler system kick on in the early morning hours, I smile, remembering the day when an HOA Karen learned that some things run deeper than you expect, like water lines, consequences, and the satisfaction of watching justice unfold in real time.